Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April 8th special meeting of council, and I would like to call the meeting to order at 4:00 p.m. Adoption of the agenda. Be resolved that council adopt the agenda as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Corn, seconder. Deputy Mayor Marecki. All in favor? Opposed? There's none. That is carried. I'd like to welcome Jennifer Ferguson from River Planning. Would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good afternoon, Council. Thank you for having me today. I also brought with me Jaskaran Singh, who is our Supervisor of Plan Review, so that's the permitting side of things, and Crystal Winzowski, who is our Special Project Coordinator, just in case there's any questions in relation to specific things, but also to introduce some of our development services team. So every year I like to present to council some information from the previous year. So what I'm hoping to do is present some statistics from 2024, look at our complaint summary, as well as our priorities for 2025, which include the building bylaw, which is also on the agenda for this afternoon. So in terms of statistics for 2024, we saw an increase in permit issuance of approximately 8.8% and a total of 1,148 permits issued. Of those, 1,029 were residential in nature. In terms of total permits issued, we have a comparison from 2018. We do know that in 2023, we did see a decline in permit issuance. This was largely in relation to interest rates and the impact that that was having on the building and development community. But that did start to increase in 2024, as mentioned, with an 8% increase in overall permit issuance. To no great surprise, West St. Paul was the #1 municipality in terms of permits issued. We've seen a lot of growth and development in West St. Paul over the last several years, and that had continued into 2024. In terms of our inspections for last year, our staff completed over 9,300 inspections. That's an average of 35.7 inspections a day, or roughly 9 inspections per inspector, with it being much higher during peak season. That was actually a 22% decrease compared to the previous year, but we also saw a loss in staff. Planning applications were relatively on par compared to the previous year. We did see a minor decrease of 2%, but overall there were 307 planning applications that were completed. Keeping in mind, we also saw some considerable staff shortages in the planning department. Planning applications received by type. So variances are typically the most common application that you'll see, as well as subdivisions. And if we break that down further by municipality, we can see that St. Clements and St. Andrews are some of the top contributors to the variances and conditional uses over the last several years. If we look at transactions by municipality, we've prepared a 5-year average. So that's overall transactions related to permits and planning applications. Again, to no great surprise, West St. Paul was the leader there, contributing to 41% of transactions over a 5-year average and 46.8% last year. Those are some high-level metrics from the previous year. I'm happy to answer any questions in relation to that before I move on to the next piece.
How
many inspectors do you currently have?
We just had a new inspector start with us as of Monday. So now we have 4 inspectors and 1 supervisor of inspection. Yeah.
Any other questions?
How many of those is it part 9? What's part 9? What's the commercial one?
Commercial is part 3.
Part 3.
So we have our supervisor of plan review, or excuse me. Yes, our supervisor of plan review can complete commercial inspections, as well as our supervisor of inspections, and one of our inspectors can do commercial as well.
Do you have a dollar value for St. Andrews in permits? Like, what is the dollar value, St. Andrews?
I do have that number. I just don't have it at my fingers currently. So that's something that I can follow up with you on.
Oh, thank you. If it could be like from 2023 and 2024,
okay,
to see the dollar value. If you want, I can send you an email on it.
Sure. We do have that in our year-end report, so we can break that out for you. And that's just permitting?
Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so I'm going to move on to complaint summaries then. So we do have a complaint policy, and a complaint is considered an expression of dissatisfaction either with service provided or a staff member. They're not related to general inquiries. It's not related to enforcement issues. And we do not respond to anonymous complaints. We need the details, the address to better understand and unpack the issues and concerns so we can look at a remedy and any changes required. So informal complaints are encouraged to be dealt with the various staff members. If that can't be resolved, then it comes to me for resolution and moving forward. Complaints can be made by phone, letter, fax, email. Somebody can come to the office to share their concerns. And if I'm not able to address it, then a formal complaint is taken to the board for resolution. As part of my discussion, I always want to provide a reminder of the complaint procedure. So if you hear complaints from ratepayers, please encourage them to reach out to me. I'm happy to address any issues or concerns that they have. If they're not comfortable doing that, if you're willing to come forward and share those details with me, I can follow up and investigate and see what sort of remedies need to be put in place, whether that's, changes to our processes or standard operating procedures or whatever needs to be done. Just for information, I report to the board on a monthly basis on any of those complaints that do come across my desk, letting you know what occurred through the investigation and what sort of outcomes resulted as part of that. So for our 2024 statistics, we had a total of 58 complaints received. Of those, 28 required no further action or were outside of our jurisdiction. So as an example, maybe we got a complaint about somebody not receiving a notification in relation to a public hearing, but they are outside the buffer that's been established in the Planning Act. Well, that's not really something that we can control and not something that is considered a valid complaint, so those had been removed. We categorized our complaints based on resources, fees, communication, zoning enforcement, and national building code. And what we found last year that the majority of our complaints related to development services or permitting and inspections, and a lot of that related to resource limitations and code requirements. So as mentioned, of those complaints that we received, 28 required no further action, and 72 required some action that was reported to the board that could have resulted in changes to the work plan for the subsequent year or tweaks to our standard operating procedures. So ongoing customer service is a priority for us. We're committed to continuous improvement. So we're working to streamline and improve service delivery, improve communication with both the public and proactively share information, and update our complaint process. Then I'm going to talk about 2025. Any questions on our complaints or complaint process?
For the number of inspectors, how has that number changed, say, over the past 5 years? Has that number gone up or has it been status quo?
Yeah, so we did see a reduction in staff last year. We saw the loss in 2022. We saw the loss of our full-time commercial inspector. Then in 2023, we saw in 2023 we saw the loss of our full-time commercial inspector. In 2024, we saw the loss of one inspector and our manager of development services. So that had a significant impact on service delivery. This year, we're kind of back up to where we were now that we have that additional person in place. We also have contract staff on call as needed if there's holidays, sickness, illness, or we're just really swamped. We have that individual that we can call on during peak season as well.
And then what would you consider would be the average time frame of when an inspector would be required to go and visit a site?
For sure.
What is considered acceptable versus?
Yes. So, going to be a long answer. There's a performance standard regulation that was implemented by the province last year at this time, and it introduced timelines for permitting and inspections. That was further restricted as of March this year. So it went from 5 days to 2 days. So right now, the target is 2 days for inspection, and that's what we're achieving right now.
Go ahead.
On your complaints, like I know you don't break them out, but do you find some of them are neighbor against neighbor, like those kind of complaints, or which we don't really deal with sometimes?
For sure. So that might be that might be something that's outside of our jurisdiction, right? Somebody was complaining that the neighbor's tree was hanging over. No, I'm sorry, we can't deal with that. That's not really within our jurisdiction.
Those
So
aren't included in the
no,
number.
they're not.
Any other questions?
Just one question, could you just expand on your bylaw enforcement? Could you, mention, that you were streamlining the policy?
Yeah, that's actually part of the 2025 work plan that I'm going to talk about. So we can get into that. And if there's more specific questions, I can certainly try and answer those for you. So what are we focusing on for 2025? Our big focus is operational efficiency and communications. Obviously, some of my focus still relates to board support, finance, district management, and then my regular duties. So in terms of operational efficiencies, during our budget discussions, we looked at the staff that we had and the anticipated workload that we were going to have in light of that performance standard regulation that I was talking about. So in addition to inspections going from 5 days to 2 days, permit issuance went from 25 days to 10 days. So that's a big change that we needed to address. And what we found was that there was a shortage of both plan review and inspection staff. So the board did add an additional inspector, which I mentioned we had start with us yesterday, but also supported peak season contract support. So we have a partnership with Red River College through the construction management program, and we were able to bring in 3 summer students to assist us from May to October during our peak season. And that has really been an excellent program that works great for succession planning. 5 of our current staff were actually former students that have stayed on with us, in addition to our supervisor of plan review. So it's been fantastic. Having said that, even with those additional staff, we're still short on what's required. So we need to make some operational changes. We need to change the way that we're doing business in order to meet customer service expectations, as well as meet the performance standard regulation. So what we're piloting is a risk framework to inspections and plan review, looking at building on current practices and optimizing efficiency. So that's looking at building type and use, size and complexity, impact on public safety, and then site specifics. So operational changes that we're looking at implementing on the plan review side, so that's related to permitting, is increasing designer responsibilities for Part 4. So that's the foundation requirements associated with construction, creating checklists for internal use. Again, we have those summer students coming in with us, making sure that everybody's looking for the same information, but also being able to share those checklists with the building and development community if we're running into consistent issues where there's information missing, but they know exactly what we're looking for. Expediting issuance of less complex permit applications, pools, hot tubs, basement development, issuing those at the triage stage rather than going through plan review. And again, the use of seasonal contract support, those summer students. And we also have a contract plan reviewer that we can call on as needed. We're looking at implementing operational changes on the inspection side as well. So in partnership with that Part 4 piece we talked about at the plan review stage, eliminating foundation inspections. The designer, the engineer, has been responsible for the plan review side of things. We're also asking that they now take responsibility for the inspection side of anything related to Part 4 of the code. We're looking at combining inspections. Right now, a typical single-family dwelling requires approximately 10 inspections. That'll be reduced to 6. Accessory buildings going from 3 to 1. We're looking at reducing re-inspections. 40% of our inspections last year were re-inspections, so relying more on photographic evidence, letters of concurrence, those sorts of things to really reduce the re-inspections that have been occurring. And reducing inspections for less complex construction. So accessory buildings that are less than 592 square feet as an example. And expanding on our current photographic evidence process. Again, for those less complex applications for re-inspections and things of that nature. So that's fairly ambitious. So how are we going to do that? We need to update and create standard operating procedures, prepare communications for those new procedures. We've already sent some of that out to the Manitoba Home Builders Association, ongoing monitoring to make sure that's working, cross-training staff as well as contract support, and updating our 5 municipal building bylaws, which is the other reason why I'm here today. So in terms of communication, that's the other critical pillar that we're working on in addition to the operational efficiencies. With staffing, we have weekly departmental meetings to make sure that everybody's on the same page and has an understanding of what we need to do and our processes involved. We have monthly staff meetings and ongoing education with our staff. Application management, our website is updated weekly with processing times as well as monthly metrics to our board, and reporting the exceptions, those outside that that performance standard regulation and the reasons behind that. Meeting with our stakeholders. So we do sit on the Manitoba Home Builders Technical Advisory Committee. We have open communication with the building and development community and annual stakeholder engagement to talk about a bit of SWOT analysis. What are we doing well and where do we need to improve? And then finally, our complaint reporting, looking to update our strategy, create communications around there, and explore software management options for better reporting. Also with communication, municipal collaboration. So working with our municipal administrators on things like budgets, building bylaws, communications, meeting with our council. So you know what we're doing and what we're working towards. Communication strategies related to fees and charges, inspection requirements, some of those changes that we're looking at implementing, and then some how-to videos. Why do I need a permit? How do I apply for a permit? There's some great AI technology out there that can really assist in getting that information out there and help the weekend warriors navigate the process. And then as well, work plan input, getting feedback from your administrators, getting feedback from yourself and the board. Again, that SWOT analysis. What are we doing well? Where do we need to improve? And then to a lesser degree, some of my priorities over the course of the year, monthly meetings with the board, meeting with the chair. We did budget for a strategic plan this year. The last strategic plan was done in 2020. This was an outcome of the value for money report that was completed through the Municipal Services Delivery Improvement Program. The board, however, wants to see how things are going financially before they decide to move forward on that. And of course, finance is a priority with monthly reporting, working with your administrators on budget preparation for the next year. In terms of district management, bylaw enforcement. So we did amend the process in relation to bylaw enforcement. It was a three-pronged approach previously. There was a request for compliance, the notice of violation, and then the order stage. So we removed the request for compliance. That was really a courtesy. And we go right to the notice of violation. I don't know if that's me, sorry. Right to the notice of violation and an order stage. And I know that the RM recently passed a general enforcement bylaw. We will need to also pass some resolutions to allow the RRPD to act under that general enforcement bylaw as well, as we have done with our other member municipalities. In terms of bylaw enforcement, we're also investigating software options for better reporting and management and tracking in association with that. I'm not sure, Councillor Marecki, if that answers your questions or.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I know this is a bit of a hot topic, the zoning bylaw review. I know everyone in all of our member municipalities have been waiting for the zoning bylaw review to be completed. So that is in the work plan, but it is heavily resource dependent. We're still short one planner. We have advertisements that have closed last week, and we're hoping to have an interviews this month to fill that position. But in order to move forward with a zoning bylaw review, we need to have somebody up and running and fully trained on the application and planning side of things to be able to devote our time and attention to that. And I have general duties related to staffing, legal matters, and reporting and the audit.
So again, back to the zoning bylaw.
Yes.
So it's not, realistically, it's not gonna be looked at for years.
No, I don't know that that's fair to say. It's the stars have to align, certainly. We need to find that ideal candidate to fill the planning role. So right now, Derek, our manager of planning, is filling the vacant planning role, managing the applications. Ideally, he should be focusing on the long range planning, but because we've had that gap, we haven't been able to do that. So we need to not start again, but start from where we left off. So it's going to, let's say we find the perfect candidate, they start in May, they're going to need several months to be up and running and fully comfortable. So best case scenario, midsummer, fall, we might be able to start, but that's dependent on a number of things, of course.
2026?
Hopefully, yeah.
Midsummer 2026 or 2025. That's pretty aggressive.
That is pretty aggressive. So I do want to come back and I can get back, follow up with your administration in terms of a timeline, sort of best case scenario where we might be if we are able to secure that position. So I can certainly provide that to your administrator. Any questions with respect to our work plan for 2025 and priorities?
Going back to the one last question on, you had foundation inspections.
Mm-hmm.
You and I and Derek have talked about progressive
Mm-hmm.
progressive permitting.
Right,
So your foundation gets a permit
right,
and then you receive letter of assurances from engineers saying that, you know, the rest of the building will be built properly,
for sure.
yet you wait for, you know, a handrail to be
Yeah,
at code before you'll give the foundation permit. And a lot of times, time is
sure.
of the essence.
Yep. I'm going to bring up Jaskaran Singh to
Well,
speak to. So that will help, right? What we're suggesting will help with that because the engineer assumes all the responsibility for that structural design component. We're not looking at that, right? From both the plan review side of things and the inspection side of things. So that's not part of our purview under the current proposal as the bylaw has been drafted.
Okay, but other jurisdictions do give progressive permitting.
Like
a
foundation only
permit,
permits.
you know, then a structure permit, then your plumbing and electrical permits and.
Yeah, so the way we've dealt with that is through our site development permit process that has really helped move that forward. I don't know if you want to speak to that a
Yes,
little
so
bit more,
basically,
Jeff?
site development will let them start with site preparation, bringing in gravel, prepping the base. And once the building permit is issued, they can start with the foundation. For commercial projects, we don't ask for mechanical or electrical to be submitted at the architectural stage or the permitting stage. Those can come in after. A big concern with the larger projects is, let's say, there would meet the spatial separation and building is too close to property line. That would mean that the building may need to be changed from wood framing to steel frame construction, and that could mean that the foundation have to be redesigned. So that's one of the challenges we have seen in the past. If there's minor issues, let's say somebody's missing a handrail, we changed that last fall. So what our current policy is, if somebody is missing a handrail on a plan, we make a note and we call them, let them know, hey, this is a code requirement, this is what you have to do. And we'll issue a permit with the condition that these need to be met during the inspection stage.
But that's the purpose of letter of assurances though, from the engineers though, is to make sure that those will be up to code and designed properly.
So the letter of assurance from engineer under part 4 is only taking responsibility for structural aspects. Engineers coming in and saying, that's not my role, handrail, fire safety, life safety, that's not my role. I'm only looking at structural. That falls under part 9, that falls under our PD to review and to look at the stuff.
I was using that as an example because it's minute and frivolous to hold back a huge foundation project,
Mhm.
you know, when you're stuck on certain little things inside the building, which is a year away.
If it's a minor issue, which is a year away, we usually try not to do that. If let's say it's a major issue, affect the foundation at a later day or during construction, then we know it's a concern needs to be addressed.
As long as we're trying, it's.
For sure, and we did implement some policies last year to issue permits subject to conditions. So
Exactly.
if there is something minor like that, it wouldn't necessarily hold up a permit, it would be conditional.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, there's been issues in the past that I've been called on, you know, an inspector will go, and give a list of what needs to be corrected.
Mhm,
Another inspector comes
mhm,
and creates another list.
mhm.
Is that being addressed?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that might be in relation to misunderstanding. So when there's a series of deficiencies that need to be addressed, we give a list to that. So what the remedies are to each one of those deficiencies could result in additional requirements, right? So depending on, I don't know, Jazz, if Jazz is the technical person, if he can give an example off the
So
top of his
We
head.
had inspection, 2 inspections done. One was for lower level plumbing in basement, which passed, and then we had a weeping tile inspection a week after. Inspector goes in, weeping tile was passed, but once we were out for lower level plumbing, the slope was changed. There was additional fixtures added, and then the inspector had to open the inspection, fail the plumbing. Then the contractor phoned, why did it get failed? We passed it initially. The reason was they changed it after the inspection had passed. The plumbing was negatively sloped, so that would mean if that was covered, it would not be draining to the septic system. So that's one of the example we see where, let's say, an inspector may have to open an inspection and redo it.
Okay. Any other further questions? Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move on to the building bylaw side of things. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment here and bring up my other presentation. So as mentioned, we do need to make some changes to the building bylaws to implement some of the operational efficiencies that we're hoping to achieve. So what is a building bylaw? It's probably not too often that you as council deal with building bylaws. The Manitoba Building Code outlines requirements for design and construction standards. A building bylaw is a regulatory bylaw based on the Manitoba Code, and it governs the construction, alteration, repair. Uh-oh, I just got kicked out here. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. Did I lose my screen?
It's not sharing currently.
Okay. I know my signal was weak here,
Yeah,
so.
mine. Twice.
You went off my phone.
So did I. Yeah, so I just had it. I know.
This is my phone. Good internet, good phone, so.
We'll try that again. Okay, that working? So the building bylaw governs construction, alteration, repair, and demolition of buildings, and it outlines when permits and inspections are required, standards of enforcement, safety measures, and construction. Our municipality's building bylaws are between 20 and 50 years old, so some of them are fairly out of date. So what our goal is as part of this process is to implement district-wide harmonization. We have 5 municipalities that we work with, 5 different building bylaws. So as part of this, we're looking to create some consistency and make them consistent across the board. That's really critical for a number of factors. It enhances safety and ensures that all structures meet modern code, modern construction and safety standards. But it also creates that consistency throughout the district in terms of what's expected by your clients, your customers, and the builders in the area, as well as administration, making sure that we're administering things and streamlining the permit process. And hopefully with that comes some additional economic development as we're able to provide that efficiency and streamlining. So as municipal council, you often see zoning bylaws, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of a distinction between the building bylaw and the zoning bylaw. So as mentioned, the building bylaw focuses on regulation, construction, alteration, repair, and demolition of structures, whereas your zoning bylaw looks at regulating planning and land use. The building bylaw sets out conditions under which permits are required and expired, and your zoning bylaw focuses on placement, size, and height of structures. It outlines when a building permit is required, the building bylaw, and the zoning bylaw looks at when a development permit is required. And then lastly, the building bylaw focuses on the technical requirements, and the zoning bylaw focuses on land use requirements. Now, right now, there's several components within your zoning bylaw that ought to be in the building bylaw. So as part of this harmonization, we're pulling those elements into that, and we can talk a little bit about what those are as we go on. So the building bylaws do focus on the responsibilities of the homeowner, and some of the general provisions included in there ensure that homeowners must ensure that documents are signed and sealed by qualified professionals. The property must be displayed visibly so we can find it during construction. Work cannot be covered until it's inspected and approved. Owners are responsible for obtaining permits even if work has already commenced. Owners are responsible for revealing and remedying any defect or violation at their own expense, and buildings must comply with bylaws and codes. So there's also duties and responsibilities of the design professional, and this is really where we want to change that responsibility in relation to Part 4, the structural component. But design professionals need to ensure that documents are sealed by a qualified architect or engineer. They must certify compliance with building codes. A certified professional submission applications are required for all Part 4 designs. So right now that's voluntary. We're making it a requirement, and that's consistent with the practice in the city of Winnipeg. And we're also requiring that design professionals conduct the inspections to ensure conformity with the design and the codes.
So number 4, design professionals must
Yep.
conduct, so is that taking away some of the burden off the current inspectors?
That's right. So our inspectors won't be completing any Part 4 inspections. So that typically relates to the foundation elements for both single family dwelling and accessory structures. So powers of the authority having jurisdiction. So when you're part of a planning district, as you are, the RRPD is the authority having jurisdiction. So we can require that plans be signed by professionals for complex projects. Permits may be issued conditionally based on additional information being submitted. We can refuse permits for unresolved defects, unpaid fees, or existing infractions on a property. Certificates from professionals may be relied upon by the authority for plan review, approval, and inspection. And we can also develop an audit program for permits, again, to rely on the certificates for plan review, approval, and inspection. So this is one of those pieces that is being pulled from the zoning bylaw into the building bylaw. We are looking to set an expiry date on permits. We have found that there are a lot of open permits of occupied buildings, so we want to try and address this, and we're proposing that there be a 5-year limitation after which a new permit is required to move forward. Applications must include reports and approvals as required. Permits are not required for fences and accessory structures less than 107.64 square feet and temporary tents under 901 square feet. We've also provided clarification on exemptions for replacement of windows or doors without altering openings, and permit exemptions for non-structural work of detached residential decks less than 1.97 feet.
May I ask, are these all new or some of these are existing?
So most of these pieces are new. So the expiry piece is new, the 5 years is new. Exemptions for accessory structures of 107 is new. Previously, it was 120 square feet. I don't believe temporary tents were even addressed previously.
Well, I question that because all for tourism in our markets here, Petersfield, Lockport, all the markets. A standard tent you can buy is 10 by 10.
Right. So those
Now
are
you're gonna
exempt.
need a building permit.
No.
No, and a temporary tent's under 901.
Right. Don't require a permit if it's a
Oh,
temporary.
sorry,
Yeah.
but these are 10 by 10.
Yeah, you're well.
You're 9 times smaller than what it's required.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm not into that.
Again, this is one of those pieces that was pulled from the zoning bylaw into the building bylaw, swimming pools and hot tubs. So a pool is defined as anything over 24 square inches, not square inches, excuse me, 24 inches deep. In-ground pools must have professional engineering approval. Outdoor pools must be enclosed within a 5-foot high fence with security features. And hot tubs and swim spas are exempt from fencing if they have a strong lockable cover. Geotechnical reports, again, one of those pieces that was in your zoning bylaw that we're pulling into the building bylaw. So they're required for any structures within 350 feet of a water body. They must assess soil bearing capacity, excavation condition, erosion risks, and bank stability. There may be some exemptions for small accessory structures unless there is a risk present. And multiple small accessory structures may require a report if the combined effect is significant. So that is a high-level summary of what we're proposing. Really what we want to do is create that harmonization and consistency. We're looking to improve operational efficiency and streamline the process. Time is of the essence for us. We're approaching construction season, so I appreciate you taking the time to hear us today. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are with respect to the building bylaw or anything else.
Counselor Hunt?
Two questions. One, your last one on your geotech.
Mhm.
Over the years along my area and Council People Corner area around Netley Creek and Wavy Creeks and that,
Mhm.
but they've had a geotech done, you know, and it's gone 3-4 years, and then your department says you need a new one, when nothing has changed with the
Right.
earth and so again, is that a common sense thing, or is nothing in there written in stone that a geotech is only good for so long?
Right. You
So
wanna field that?
EGM policies, engineers geoscientist policies, their policies indicate that any engineering document is only valid for a year. Anything after that, a document, it cannot be used due to insurance purposes, building code changes. So what we do is, let's say there was a geotech done 4 years ago, what we ask the applicant is, we can use the same report as long as you can provide something from the engineer if they allow us to use the same report, and if there is any concerns from their end.
I can understand with building, because building codes change, but the ground doesn't change, you know, like.
I've seen mixed opinions from engineers. I've seen where they said that if it's so close to a lake or a river, the soil conditions could change depending on how much time it has passed. And the flood level could also rise or get lower, so that could affect the ground condition. So what we try to do is basically, if there's a previous geotech report, just give us confirmation from the engineer. If they're okay with it, we won't ask for a new report.
And that goes back to the EGM. So that's the
Yeah.
Engineers Association in Manitoba, who says that it's only valid for a year. So we have to be mindful of that part too.
I can understand on building stuff, because
Yes.
that changes.
Yeah.
Code that.
Yeah.
The other one is garden suites.
Yes.
Where is that gonna come up? Is that coming up under our zoning bylaw review, or?
Yes, that's part of your zoning bylaw
Over
considerations.
the years, we've changed kind of like, you know, I've said, circle of life, you know, because
Mhm.
garden suites are for a certain reason.
Mhm.
Now, when those parents that were looking after their parents, or the children looking after their parents, now they move into that
Mhm.
garden suite, and then the children move into the house, so.
Right,
And we've had a couple of applications come in, they call it grow in place and age in place.
for sure.
So we hear on the news these days with federal election and housing affordability
Mhm.
becoming another state, another cog in that wheel.
For sure. So
So-
that's a land use consideration and definitely part of zoning discussions.
Right.
Yeah.
And having them removed after that person deceases or is gone,
Right,
which is, you know, not the purpose of it, you know, like I
Right.
say, a circle of life, or grow in place and age in place. And
yeah,
so the last few we've done, we've eliminated that condition
right,
in the conditions, taking that condition out.
right. Yeah, makes sense. It definitely needs to be reviewed, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you so much for your time today, council. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna stick around for round 2.
thank you for explaining,
Oh,
thank you for explaining all of this and bringing it forward.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, this matter is over. Be it resolved, the meeting be adjourned at 4:39 PM. Could I have a mover, please? Counselor Sliker, seconder. Counselor Feeblecorn, all in favor? Carried.